One of the administrators of the scholarship said foster kids typically don't graduate. My grades are this. I've got accepted into the top journalism school. Don't play with me. Statistically, you're going to be more likely to end up homeless. Statistically, you're going to be this, that, the other.
Don't put that on me.
Don't put exactly. I would make choices. Kids were going to be out partying and drinking. I would know when to leave. I was cognizant that the stakes are higher for me. I didn't have the safety net that a lot of my peers had. You have to commit to something if you want people to commit to you. Your success then actually becomes a part of their success because they develop you. So I've been living on my own since I was 16 years old. And so one thing that I would tell my younger self or anybody that's in the system is not to let other people tell you who you are.
We still have power. We have the power of choice. Hi, friends. Have you ever been underestimated, judged by your circumstances instead of your potential? Today's episode is your reminder that you hold the power to redefine your story. Today, we're joined by the phenomenal Giselle Phelps. Giselle shares with us what it means to be grown at 16, build a life on your own terms, and own the radical truth that you get to decide who you are. Whether you're a current foster alumni and ally, or someone working to rewrite your own narrative, today's episode will leave you fired up with clarity, courage, and the confidence to choose your next chapter. So tune in, take notes, and take your power back. Thanks for joining me today on 1 Million Fosters, and don't forget to subscribe. Hi, family. Thank you for joining in at 1 Million Fosters. And today I am so excited to share with you someone that I recently met, and we've had so many conversations. I'm blessed that the universe brought her my way. We have Giselle Phelps. Giselle Phelps is a global talent communications leader, speaker, CEO, and founder of Grand Rising Talent. Giselle has extensive experience in the development of high-impact, results-driven media and communication strategies that elevate talent and brand awareness. She is also a former foster and a community member of 1 Million Fosters. Giselle, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to share you and your experiences with the 1 Million Fosters crew and friends. And so, to
Thank you
begin,
so much for having me.
thank you. I always ask this question when we begin. We'll get into your beginnings in a moment, but share with us, who is Giselle today?
That's a great question because I feel like I'm in a period of evolution right now. But I am a sister, a friend, a cousin, an auntie. I am a leader. I'm an advocate. I'm queer. I'm Black. I'm woman. I'm all those things. So
I love the
um,
voice.
all those things make up who I am.
Nice, nice. I feel like our stories begin before we enter into the world. And so, as former fosters, we're put into situations sometimes that are beyond our control. I'd like for our viewers and our audience to understand a little bit more about you. Could you share a bit about your journey entering into foster care?
Yeah, so I went into foster care around 13. And so I grew up in Canada, and I was raised by a single parent, by my mother. And so it was my mom, my sister, and I growing up. And we had a very small nuclear family. My grandmother and my aunt were also very involved on my mother's side. And so I grew up not knowing my father.
Mm.
I didn't find my father or get to know him until I was in college.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I ended up in foster care because my mother had mental health issues, and like I said, we had a very small nuclear family. My grandmother was elderly. My aunt, who has since passed away, had health issues. So, my there was nobody else to take care of me. My sister at the time had just turned 18.
Oh, wow.
So she wasn't, eligible actually to go in foster care because she had literally just turned 18. And so that's how I ended up in the system. Yeah,
And how long were you in foster care? Did you emancipate out?
I did. I emancipated out at 16. So it's so
Wow.
funny. I was just doing the math the other day on how long I've been living on my own because I'm 42. And so I've been living on my own since I was 16 years old. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Imagine that. At
Yeah.
16, how did that feel to emancipate out of foster care? After being in for 3 years and then emancipating out, what was that experience like?
Yeah. It's so nuanced, right? Because I think at the time, I think I really wanted to be emancipated
Mm,
because there are so many dynamics at play for me at that time. One of them being, and again, this is all perspective that I have as a grown ass woman at 42, right? But back then, I don't necessarily think that I would have the language or, to even really articulate this. But, I was placed in white foster homes
mhm,
as, a Black child, right? And so, um, even though I had one bad experience with foster care, I had one pretty positive, and I'm still in touch with that family today. But at
mm,
the same time, the racial dynamics were something that were never addressed, right? Even by my caseworkers or anybody at the time. And so I think that just instinctively, I at that time I felt like I just wanted to be on my own to just kind of navigate life because I felt like even though they were nice people that they didn't really have the tools
mm,
to help me get where I wanted to go as a Black girl, right? Um so I think I was ready to be emancipated, and that was a big part of it. I also think that honestly, at that age, I was so, I guess, naive in a way, but nothing really scared me, right? So I was just kind of, nothing scared me, honestly. And
great.
so I was brave and I moved, just kind of moved one step at a time ahead, right? So although sure, the thought of living on your own, obviously is scary to an, I don't know, when I think back on that time, I don't ever remember being that afraid,
I
right?
love
I don't remember being that afraid. And
I
I
love
honestly knew because I had always been very independent, even when I was living with my mother, that my sister and I were just raised to be very independent. So I knew kind of that I could take care of myself, right?
wow,
Um so that's, yeah, I I was just raised to be very independent. So I
that.
knew I could take care of myself. So yeah, I mean, that sounds wild to me to even hear myself say that because at 42 if I met a 16-year-old I'd be like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
I
there is
yeah.
amazing strength that comes with knowing that you can rely on yourself.
Yes,
So, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I knew I could take care of myself and yeah, yeah, I hope that answered your question. I don't know.
Now, belonging in foster care, you mentioned growing up or being in foster care with a family that was identities that was different than your own. And our experiences can vary so widely. Were there any positive aspects or relationships during your time in care that you felt were beneficial that helped you transition into emancipation or helped you transition into adulthood?
Yeah, So the last foster mother that I had, Betty, I still adore her to this day. She's an Irish woman, and she's been in Canada for probably 40 years, but she still has a thick Irish accent, and she's a beautiful person, very nurturing. She's had so many foster kids,
Ah,
that she's helped out through the years, and she also has her own kids, and her son Mark lived in the house when I was there. He's a couple of years older than me, and I'm still in touch with them today. I mean, I'm still, I'm Facebook friends with the boys and everything like that, and whenever I go back to Canada, I'll pop in and visit her. And she did do a lot to help me get to the next level. Like, when I wanted to apply to university, she would help, she was helping. She saw my determination, and she would do what she could within, her wheelhouse
yeah.
to help facilitate that. Like, I remember wanting to apply to journalism school, and she helped me, like, get the application off and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was a positive, you know, that's the thing. That was a positive
Yeah.
relationship. But
Yeah.
again, I think I was just cognizant of her limits, right? And again,
Mm.
she's a white Irish woman
Mhm.
from, and I'm who I am. So,
Yep.
but yeah, but that was a very as positive as it could be, right?
Okay. Okay.
I
We
think
all
just
need a
given,
Betty.
yeah, we all need a Betty, right? And so, yeah, like, Betty's a good person. I know that, and she did what she could for me. So,
I love
yeah,
that. I love
yeah,
that. That says a lot about you, Giselle,
yeah,
that you took the positive of what Betty had to offer. And
yeah,
also, what I hear is no judgment on her limitations. You were aware of what they were and
yes.
realized that you needed to do something beyond what she could do for you, but appreciated what she offered.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think
Good.
that's an accurate assessment of the experience. Yeah, yeah.
Now, were there any significant challenges or systemic issues you encountered in foster care that you feel needed to be addressed then or changed? Or from your now experience looking hindsight, anything that
Mm.
you would look back on that said that might have been a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably several. There's probably several. Um, but it's funny, when I first got placed in foster care, like I said, I didn't know my father.
Mhm.
And they the agency that was, managing my case, they said that they were, had run an ad in the US papers trying to find him, or something to that degree. Something like that. But I had his name and his information, all this stuff, right? I always felt like they didn't really try hard enough to find him, because
Mhm.
when I got to university, I mean, obviously the internet was kind of evolving at that time and stuff as well. But me and my friends found him and located him, contacted him. Him and his wife ended up coming to Toronto to meet me. Yeah, so I did feel like they didn't really try hard enough, or try hard enough. Like, my mom had lots of cousins and, different relatives. They didn't really search my network wide enough to maybe find, like, a relative that I could have lived with, or to find my father and, like, really explore those leads, right? It was kind of like, and I get it now as an adult, and how the systems work, and just time and it's kind of what's easier, and so yeah, I think that they didn't do enough due diligence.
Ah, that's sad. I wonder if when you were in foster care, if you had connected with your birth father, would that have made an impact being in care or emancipating out of care?
It potentially could have, because when I found him, he had no clue that I was even in care. He had no clue. So he had no idea of, like, all this life experience I was having.
Yeah. knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self as you were navigating challenges like that of emancipation and of building a life on your own?
Jeez. Say that again, because that's a big question to answer.
Yeah.
What would I tell my younger
So let me tell you where I'm trying to go with
self?
this.
Okay.
I'm thinking of if there's a young foster that is listening to you right now and sees all of the success that you have, CEO, speaker, founder, I know when I was in foster care, I didn't see what success looked like as a foster. I didn't
Mm,
know that I could be that successful. So telling my younger self, hey, imagine or look at the future. I'm thinking about Giselle at 13 entering into foster care. What would
yeah.
Giselle at 42 tell Giselle at 13?
Well, actually, so thank you for that prompt because it did get my wheels turning. So I'll share a story. Um, and let me preface it to say this. I think as people that are in foster care, you're bombarded with a lot of statistics and
Mm,
information about, that are framed negatively, right? That you're going to be more likely to, end up pregnant. Statistically, you're going to be more likely to end up homeless. Statistically, you're going to be this, that, the other. And so I remember hearing all these statistics, right? Or, just the news, or even your caseworker might talk to you about them, or whatever the case. So there's a lot of negative framing,
yeah,
right, around who you are because you are in foster care. And
right.
so one thing for me is that I would tell my younger self, or anybody that's in the system, is not to let other people tell you who you are.
Mm,
And I remember when I was getting ready to graduate high school and I was applying for scholarships for university, I had to go for an in-person interview for this foundation that was going to give me a full scholarship um, to university. And I'm sitting there in this boardroom, and people are asking me questions. And one of the administrators of the scholarship said, you know, um, foster kids typically don't graduate. And we've done this in the past, and people don't graduate, and whatever. And I was like, well, that's not going to be a problem for me. Like, I'm going to graduate. So I don't care about what you've had happen in the past. I can only tell you about Giselle Phelps. And I remember just directly, and I think my caseworker was with me or somebody, and I was just like, don't even put that on me. Like, my grades are this. I've got accepted into the top journalism school. Don't play with me.
Don't put that on me.
Don't put exactly. And so I just rejected it, like, very sternly and, directly. And and I got that scholarship, and I had it all 4 years.
Wow. And you
So,
graduated.
and I graduated.
Bam.
And so again, there are all these statistics that people are going to throw at you,
Yeah.
even in a situation like that where you should be getting, encouragement,
Yes.
right? And so you can't let tell people tell you who you are. You can't let people, especially when you have a vision for yourself, or goals, or just a fire in your belly. Don't let anybody tell you who you are. You
I
can decide. Yeah.
You can decide.
Yeah.
What do you feel you've achieved so much and you've built an impressive career. I'm wondering, like, what attributes to the success that you've had throughout your career?
Yeah, I think a level of fearlessness that we've all, and honestly, just a blind audacity, I guess, in a way, like, just not, it's funny. Just, I think that the beautiful thing about being a young, right, is that you don't really you don't really think too far ahead as a young person, right? Like when you're in your 20s and stuff like that. And there's a beauty to that because that you're fearless, right? Where I think as you get older and you assess risk and all sorts of
Mm,
different things, and you have more to lose and more responsibilities and all
mm,
that kind of stuff, and that factors into how you move in the world. And so I think the beautiful thing about being young, which I would say was the case for me, is that you do just you have the ability and you can afford to
yeah.
move with a level of fearness and just blind audacity that you
Uh,
might not be able to as you get older and have more responsibilities and things like that. And so I think that was a big part of it for me. Obviously, having a level of resilience. I remember, having a lot of conversations with my peers, like in my early 20s and stuff like that, and where I can't even think of a specific example to give, but just little interpersonal things or different things that would really just stress them out would not I wouldn't be a stressor for me because I was already living as an adult since I was 16, right?
mhm.
So like there was just certain things that I wouldn't really spend energy on that a lot of people would spend energy on, right? Because
Mm,
which though as a 42-year-old now, I see in a different way because as a young person should have space to exercise those different feelings and experiences and emotions. So in a way, I wasn't afforded that room because I
mhm,
had no choice but to just kind of like
mm,
make adult decisions very early. But at the
yes.
same time, because I had started exercising that muscle so early, I think it made me more like decisive and I didn't let certain things, kind of, you know, um, distract me or, in the way that my peers necessarily would, right? Because I had already kind of gone through a lot of those experiences even by the time I was in college, right? Like even
Mhm,
just the idea of like searching for an apartment or, negotiating a lease, like just simple things like that, right? Like I had by the time I was in college, I'd already been
wow.
right where for my peers it's like that's a new experience. It seems very daunting. It's like, or like setting up bills, setting up your electric, like whatever, right? So it's like just things like that. Just
Wow.
kind of became second nature for me that
Yeah,
so I would say yeah, I would say that fearlessness, resilience, yeah, and honestly a lot of it was choice, right?
choice.
I would say the power of choice, right? And I think that's really important for fosters to to consider. Um, and I remember just in my teens and early 20s, I remember just some peers, they'd be like, oh, commenting like, I was definitely fun and I would hang out, but I would make choices, right? Because I knew that the stakes were higher for me, right?
Mm,
So it's like if kids were going to be out partying and drinking or whatever, I I might, hang out, but I would know when to leave. I would know, how far I could take things, right? Because
mm,
I had a I was cognizant of that the stakes are higher for me.
yes. Can you say more about the choices? And I'm wondering, like,
Who you hang out with, who you hang out with, right? Like like that's the thing. For me, those choices carried more weight.
yeah, yeah, they were heavy.
They were heavy, yeah, because, if I end up if, at 16, 17, if I, you know, got arrested for drinking or doing drugs or whatever, nobody's coming to bail me out.
Right, right. You're on your own.
No, I didn't have the safety net that a lot of my peers had. So that
Yeah.
informed my choices, right?
Ah,
And
mm,
so I just think you have power over your choices, right? And so that's something that I took seriously. So who you hang around, how you spend your time,
yeah.
um, what you're pouring your energy and attention into. Um,
How has that framed how you make decisions today?
I think I'm still very intentional about all those things, right? In a different way. I think I'm still very intentional about all those things. Yeah, definitely in a different way, but I think that that set the tone for a lot of the journey that I've had because I chose friends in high school who were focused on going to college and university,
Mhm.
and I chose friends who shared a similar vision for themselves, right?
Mhm.
And so that's, people always talk about like who you surround yourself with. And so I think there's a lot of power in that. And,
Wow.
a lot, majority of my friends from high school didn't have nearly the situation that I had. A lot of them had two parent families, middle class, upper middle class. Um, but yeah, I think that I just surrounded myself with people who shared the same vision for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so that, yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. And then, I had a job in high school. I worked at a grocery store. A lot of my friends worked at the same grocery store. And
Oh,
so we were hanging out at work at the grocery store, right? Like, so I think that, yeah, like those choices.
I love that. I
And it
love that.
also, too, you know, creating structure and stability for yourself wherever you can. And I
Mm,
think those were also ways that I created structure and stability. So it's like, you know, that job at the grocery store, that was like, an extended family because it's like, you're creating a structure for yourself. You're
yeah.
creating a place where people are expecting you and like notice if you're gone and things like that. So I think that's something that anybody in foster care should be looking for to create those communities, those, especially at those ages, like when you're in your teens and youth,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, that was very instrumental. Those were building blocks for me to get where I am today, right? And even just the tools that I learned in in that job at the grocery store or the community that you had. And also those people supported me in moving on to university into my next chapter. And
Wow.
so I think that was key for sure. I've never really talked about it in this way, but yeah, it was really key, right? They were building a block for
Yeah. Yeah.
me to start moving and incrementally in the direction that I knew I wanted to go in. Yeah.
There's so much, and I want to use a word that you used, and I wrote it down twice, power, and what you just said. There's so much power in what you just said, Giselle, or what you've been saying. And I want to, I hope that people hear. One of the things I know about foster care is there's so much instability and there's so much like lack of what you can control. But what I hear that you did from you have this determination that um is fueling you, and also the decision that you made. I heard you say, I chose. It wasn't this was chosen for me, or they put me with this group. It was, I chose these friends. I chose this job. I chose to leave at a certain time. And I think that's important for those of us in foster care and for those of us who are allies outside of or adjacent to realize in situations where you don't have choices or you feel like there's a lack of your own control, what can you control? What choices can you own to own your own power again? So I think that's
Yeah.
something that, and to see who you are today, for that to be building blocks, that's just amazing and speaks to the values of who you are.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm like, the other thing I would say is too, because you mentioned about, the instability that comes with being in foster care. I will say I was very blessed that even though my home life was unstable, the one piece of stability I had was at school and my part-time job, right? So
Mm,
I was lucky that I stayed in the same kind of school and pipeline that my whole career, right? So the same kids that I went to elementary school with, I went to middle school with, I went to high school with. So even though, my home life was unstable, that part of my life stayed very stable, right? So I
right.
was able to graduate with my cohort, a lot of whom I was in kindergarten with, right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so that was very anchoring,
I
right?
love
And then, like I said, a lot of my friends from high school, we also worked together at the grocery store. So that was a very kind of stable part of my world at that time. So
wow.
yeah,
Wow. So as foster youth, we often learn how to be very independent and rely on ourselves only.
yeah.
Has this independence helped or hindered you in your professional journey?
Well, that's a great question. I think a little bit of both, right? Because I think being so independent, um, hyper independent, really, because of my life experience, it's very hard to ask for help. So I think
Ah,
that, I found myself often taking on more than I should, more than I can, burning myself out,
mm,
and all those things. And so those have been tough lessons to learn. And really, it's an unlearning, right? It's an unlearning, and knowing that asking for help is strength. It's not a weakness. That, even though I it was forced independence was forced upon me, that as I've gotten older and you're trying to do more, you have to ask for help. So I think that's been a major shift in my personal and professional journey, right? So yeah, so you're independent, which makes you very resourceful and all those things, which is fantastic. But, nobody can do everything alone. Like, we all need help, right? And so, yeah, so I think there's been parts of my journey professionally where that independence has served me very well. And then other aspects where it's hindered me because, asking for help was not something I was always comfortable doing,
yeah,
for a variety of reasons, right? So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Uh, let's talk about the role of mentors. And I asked this specifically because asking for help is not only as a former foster, but sometimes as Black women, we're given the cape that we can do everything. We don't ask
yeah.
for it; it's just here. It's expected. Um, in what ways have you been able to, throughout your career, either have mentors or coaches, or that you've been able to ask for help, or in what ways have you um, gotten the help that you've needed? And how has mentorship or the lack of mentorship been a benefit for you or a lack of?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think in the zeitgeist today, that term mentorship or sponsor or whatever, like, has a particular meaning attached to it. And I think that's kind of honestly a more recent kind of um, defining. Whereas I think that especially in the early 2000s and everything, when I was really in the early stages of my career, we didn't really hear that word thrown around so much. But I would say that I've had people advocate for me a lot,
Mm.
right? And um, sure, there are people that I would classify as mentors in that kind of traditional sense now. But I think looking back to the earliest points of my career, um, I have been lucky to have people who recognize my talent and
Mm.
who gave me opportunities and poured into me and gave me opportunities to get to the next level, right? Like even thinking back to one of my first jobs in business news in Toronto. And I'm still in touch with a lot of these people today, but a couple key people come to mind who, would, for example, one of the anchors at the time, she actually gave me a pair of pink patent leather pumps, right, that she had worn on air. And she told me, when you get on air, I want you to wear these. And let
Oh,
me tell you, I carried those shoes from every market that I went to. And so, yeah, because she just saw in me, this is a white woman, that I had what it takes to get to the next level, right? And she's followed my career. And I had another executive producer that I worked with at the time there. I was like a chase producer, very low level, but he would send me on field shoots and, give me feedback on my writing and, help me acquire more skills to get, to the next level. So that's just, that was my first job straight out of university. So that's what I'm saying. Just taking it way back to that point, I've always had people who could see my talent and that would pour resources into me, right? And actually, it's funny on this topic. One of my friend Anthony, who I mentioned at the beginning of this, who's coming to LA,
yes.
I was his intern.
Oh, wow.
I was his intern. He was one of my first mentors. And
Wow.
it's funny because we're friends today he is a mentor. I mean, he really is a major mentor. He was a news anchor at the time at the NBC affiliate in Syracuse, New York, where I did my internship
Yeah.
in 2005. So we've been
Yeah.
friends for 20 years.
Wow.
And he was one of the first people that I went out on news shoots with. And he was
Wow.
teaching me how to interview people. And so now his career's evolved. He's the chair of journalism at Newhouse at Syracuse University. And so he has been an incredible mentor to me in all the ebbs and flows of my career. I mean, he's sent me interns, he's read my resume, he's looked at my tapes. I mean, just oh my gosh, like just beyond. I've had Easter dinner at his family's house. He's been an incredible lifelong mentor. But we're
Wow.
friends, so I don't even put him in that mentor category anymore. But yeah, so I have been
Yeah.
very, very blessed. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Again, Giselle, that says a lot about you. And I want to repeat back something that you said. And I want to, if we could dig into it just a moment, because there's something to learn there. You said it's what you do with it. Can you share a little bit more about what you do with the support or the advocacy that your community pours into you? Because what I hear from you is gratitude and the word blessed. Like, how
yeah,
should they, if I were looking in and listening in on this conversation, and what should I do
yeah.
to appreciate that? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think using the example from business news, the producer who I was referencing, his name's John Buffoni. and that he would send me on shoots and whatnot. I think, you you show people that that you're reliable, that your work is good, that you're trustworthy, that pouring into you is going to reflect positively on them, right? Like this has to be a reciprocal thing, right? I think that's the other part of like mentorship that people need to understand, right? That not that people do, nobody's doing it with the intention of like getting something back. Like I don't think that's what he thought at all. He just saw a young woman with talent that he knew he could help develop and trust as a colleague, right? So, but at the same time, what results from that needs to be positive.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
And so, yeah, so what results from that needs to be positive, because that your success then actually becomes a part of their success because they developed you. They helped develop you. And he's still somebody to this day that I can send message and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and he'll hit me back, or vice versa, right? So, and also just like remembering that these, like some of these relationships I'm talking to you about, these are 20-year long relationships, right? So it's like, I didn't think that at the time, but that's something I would be thinking about if I was a young person in foster care. Like a lot of the people you encounter early on in your career are going to be, and just in life, are
Yeah.
going to be relationships that you carry with you. So hold them in high regard, like hold them in high regard, pour into them, show gratitude, make sure it's a positive experience, be reliable. One of the things I would always hear from folks that would advocate for me is that they knew I was consistent, like I was consistent and reliable, right?
Mm,
Like that
yes.
reliability. I actually yeah, just being reliable, being consistent, right? So, and I would hear that a lot when I was young. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to give you this opportunity because I know you'll be reliable."
I love that. I love that.
So, which is hard to do when you are in a circumstance where your home life might be unstable. That it's hard because there's probably a lot going on in your life, right? But I think choose a few people, a few of those relationships where you can commit to, right?
Oh,
Because it's like if you have to commit to something if you want people to commit to you.
you're dropping so many gems, Giselle. Like I keep writing down so much. Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that can be the hard part, because I think commitment is hard for people who are in care, right?
Yes.
Because you don't know what the next month, the next year, whatever is going to look like.
Yes.
But you have to be able to show a level of commitment. If people know that you're committed, they will pour into you. They'll give you opportunity, right? And so you can't commit to everything, but choose wisely.
Choose.
Yeah, so
Choices.
choose. Yeah, it comes back to choices, right? A lot of this is choices. But yeah, choose wisely. Like, whatever it is, like that you are interested in, or choose a couple people that you can commit to, and ride with them. Ride with
Oh,
them
I
for the
love that.
long haul.
Keep it
That's what I'm
going.
saying. Anthony been riding with me for 20 years, baby. 20 years, right? So, yeah, you got to pick a couple people that are going to ride with you.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love that. Choose a ride or die. I love that. Choices.
Yeah, and again, like you said, like I was saying, at the time, again, nobody can see the future. So you don't know for sure. Like I didn't know that, Anthony and I are going to be friends 20 years later, right? But I I knew that this person's showing an interest in me and pouring into me, and
Yeah.
I can reciprocate that with commitment, enthusiasm, positivity, reliability, things that don't cost anything.
Yes. Yes. Show up. Yes. So Giselle, I know you're transitioning into from entrepreneur into this next phase. What is next for you, Giselle?
Well, that's a good question. I think that definitely more sharing my story. This is a part of that, right? So, and I think we've discussed that. But yeah, sharing my story. I think you know, being in media game for over 20 years at this point, I've helped so many people tell their stories, so many. And I'm at the point where, yeah, I want to share my story, share a lot of what I've learned. I think that I do have a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's next for me. And
Okay.
that will come in a variety of forms. So stay
Good.
tuned. Yeah.
Good. Good. And you've mentioned before our conversations, and so I want to share with those who are listening that Giselle and I have had some coaching conversations, and so coaching is intended to uncover solutions to challenges that you're facing. And I'm wondering if you can share, if you'd be open to sharing what coaching has helped you uncover. And how do you plan on using whatever you've uncovered to help you transition into what's next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Shayla is an amazing coach. Everybody should.
Thank you, Giselle.
Yeah, I mean, it's helped me connect the dots in a new way that I wasn't really connecting the dots before. And to really identify my strengths and weaknesses so I know where to focus my energy. So I think that's a big part, at any point in your career, to really kind of know what your strengths and weaknesses are and where your attention should go. We all have so much coming at us every day, especially those of us who run businesses. So, and sometimes you're just in it and you're not really taking a step back to look at it holistically in that way. And so I found that incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. And I'm somebody who really likes tangibles and all this stuff, but what the coaching gave me the framework so that I can put together a tangible action plan.
I love
So, so yeah, I, I'm so thankful. I'm very thankful.
Good, good, good. And speaking of action, what are your hopes for the future, both professionally and personally?
Yeah. Well, I am at the point in my career where, or just life in general, where I don't value professional accolades as professional as much as I used to, right? So I'm feel, as we've discussed, I'm in like a transition where I think that the things I enjoy personally are more important to me than, you know, accomplishing this. And so it's like those things, the things I do professionally need to support what I'm looking to do personally.
Yeah.
Right? It's like kind of a shift in dynamic. And so that's where I'm at. It's like, we all need to work, we all need to earn a living. But the things I do professionally need to support my personal goals.
Ooh,
Right. And so that's where I am in terms of like how you want to live, just how you want your days to look. Um, and so that's where I'm at. And as I
I love
mentioned before, part of what I love is cooking, gardening. And one of my goals is to have a coffee shop or Airbnb, bread and breakfast. So that's on my vision board.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so professional goals should support those longer term personal goals. Yeah.
That is, again, wisdom, dropping gems. Um, I
And I
love
think
that.
that's a natural part of how the evolution of your life and career should look, right? Like a certain way you're going to operate and build in your 20s and 30s that, you know, by the time you're in your early 40s, like it's going to start to look a little different. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What message of encouragement or inspiration would you like to offer other former foster youth who are achieving or striving to achieve their goals?
Encouragement. Like I said, I think the biggest is just don't let anybody tell you who you are.
Ooh, yes,
Don't
yes,
let anybody tell you who you are.
yes.
You get to decide who you are because people are going to try so hard to tell you who you are.
Ooh,
And you really have to be clear about who you are.
ooh,
And, other people can encourage it, pour into it. But at the end of the day, it's you. It's funny. I was just listening to a podcast interview of Tina Knowles, who has Beyonce's mom, who has a book out. And I can't remember, she's done so many interviews in the last week, so I can't remember which platform this was on. But in the interview, she was talking about Solange and how Solange had her child early. I believe she was still a teen technically. Um, and so Tina was talking about that, and she said, "Listen, at the end of the day, she's her own person, right? Like,
true. Yep.
and it's her life. Like, at the end of the day, it's her life. And so
Yeah.
that's the thing is that as a former foster youth, you have agency. I think
Mm,
that, you know, people in foster care are made to feel like they don't have agency because so many decisions are being made for them and the circumstances they didn't get to choose. But you actually have agency over your own life.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that the sooner, the earlier you can recognize that, that can help you push through, carry through, because you have agency. You get to decide who you are. Other
Oh,
people are going to can help and do whatever they can, but at the end of the day, you got to decide that for yourself. So
yeah.
you don't have to succumb to your circumstances. You can, you have agency. You
Yeah.
really do. And that's,
What I love what I Giselle, you are talking to the 13-year-old Chayla right now. What I am hearing, and I hope others hear this too, regardless of what age we are, regardless of where we are in our lives, what we're transitioning into, sometimes people want to put um they want to define you based off of the situation that you're in or based off of what they immediately see. We still have power. We have the power of choice, and we can choose who we want to be. That no
yeah,
one can take that away. That is internal and cannot be taken away. We can choose.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I would say. Just you get to decide who you are and you have agency over your own life, even though it might not feel like it at times, but you do. Yeah.
All right. My final question to you, Miss Giselle. What can I do to continue to support you?
You've already done so much. Yeah, you've already done so much. Um, as this next chapter of my journey evolves, definitely being a peer mentor, right? I peer mentorship I think is so important. I think that we all have different skill sets. And so I think a lot of times when we think of mentorship or sponsors, we obviously think of somebody who's, you know, older, more experienced, or whatever. But honestly, so much of our relationships are going to be lateral. in our same peer group, and just coming from people that have different points of view, experiences in different industries, and experience in different departments, different lanes. And so I think just having a broad network of peer mentors that I can call on is so important to me. And you are just so invaluable. I mean, like I said, meeting you has been one of the highlights of 2025 for me so far. So just
That brings me joy.
being an email or phone call away is that's all I'll ask. That's all I'll
Okay,
ask.
you got it. You got it. And for those who are listening in and want to support you, how can they find you? Where can they go to find out what you're doing next?
Yeah, so I'm on all the socials. Giselle J Phelps is my Instagram. My agency is GRT Agency on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. My website is grandrisingtalent.com. I'm on Threads. I'm not on X or Twitter anymore. I had to leave that one, but I'm on I'm on a lot of socials, so you can find me there. Yeah.
Amazing. Giselle, thank you for dropping so many gems. I like we've had the coaching, but I feel like I grew in this moment today. I've
Oh,
learned.
wow. Wow, thank
And
you.
thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for trusting me with your story. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for inspiring others.
Thank you so much. It's the least we can do. Those of us that have been blessed and afforded opportunity, it really is. This is the bare minimum. So